Welcome to the Alfalfa Podcast. We are four radically moderate investor and entrepreneur friends seeking the alfalfa in money and life. I thought I would try that out. What do you guys think?
Sounds great.
Okay, great.
Feels snug.
Yeah,
So
I think
good.
I think I'm going to do it every time. We also need an outro. I was discussing this last time. Eric, did we come up with one? I forgot that.
No.
We did. We had an outro.
We did?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, let's try it on for size.
Maybe it'll come to me at the end of this. If it's your first time here, alfalfapod.com. All links are there. We have a really fun, exciting episode today. There's obviously been a frenzy in the markets. There was a huge update today with the Fed, as expected, but we're going to break that down. We're going to begin with our alfalfa round, and most importantly, the meat of today's episode is the Balaji bet, but not so much the bet and why he's doing it, but his ideological sort of what he's really presenting here and our thoughts on that. And we want to debate this out. And Steven and I have already been trying to keep it in our pants to kind of go at each other on this a little bit.
Oh, you saw me poking you on the internet? Did you see that? Did you notice that?
Very curious about everyone. I kind of want to have a little, I have not personally formulated a full opinion on the matter yet. And one of the reasons we became friends and why we do this podcast is to help formulate those opinions and understand and battle test our assumptions. And I'm really excited about that for this episode because Balaji is ringing a huge alarm and Arthur Hayes is also ringing an alarm, and there's a lot to discuss. But let's kick off with the alfalfa round. And before we do, I just wanted to give some recognition to our community. Things have just been amazing lately in the alfalfa community, in the Discord. And I want to specifically give shout outs to a few people. So Rectum, who's running our Twitter and has still been running it. He was supposed to run it like over a weekend and he's still just like crushing it. Absolutely hilarious.
He's
helping
so
us
good.
grow our brand, our community. Paradox, who not only is like this incredible person that greets everybody in the space as a whole and helps just sort of facilitate the conversation, but also posts an update to our Twitter about what's going on in our community almost every day, highlighting, and that's been driving a bunch of people. So thank you, Paradox. And last but not least, Jordan, who's helping us produce this podcast and came from the community, happened to live in San Diego, and all the clips you guys see, all the production, getting this podcast out on time every single week, that's all Jordan and Giorgio as well. So
Jordan went to the same elementary school that I did.
ooh, that's a fun fact.
Couple great products of Jerebeck Elementary. The koalas.
Jesus.
Wait, you guys are the koalas?
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of eucalyptus trees, a ton of eucalyptus trees in our neighborhood.
Can you imagine when there was
Sounds
like
rich.
a basketball game?
So cute.
It's like, we're playing the koalas this week, Mom.
This is third grade.
All right. So you do not have alfalfa, Nick, but do you guys?
Yeah, I guess my first alfalfa will be a shout out to San Diego State basketball. You mentioned basketball. We're in the Sweet 16, boys. We're about to shock the world going up against the number one team in the nation, Alabama, on Friday. I'm going to be at a wedding. I'm not going to be able to see. Who holds their wedding on Friday, by the way? So I'm not going to be able to watch. My actual alfalfa is I've been buying bonds, right? I've been buying treasury bills, particularly. But today I bought some mortgage-backed securities.
Whoa.
These are like longer duration bonds. And my thought is that I think we're going to see a cycle into these higher yielding mortgage-backed securities. And that'll be like a better way to get yield on something that's government-backed. So I'm a believer, and like the trade's already working for me in one day.
Well, you mentioned the Discord that the reason you liked it was because it's one of the few ways for banks to be profitable. Can you maybe just explain that for me a little bit?
Yeah. So I mean, Hookem even brought it up at the beginning of this announcement that there was going to be this BFTP sort of like bailout. Banks will be able to collateralize all of their government-backed loans. So that includes treasuries and that includes mortgage-backed securities, particularly these agency-backed mortgage-backed securities. So the spread is currently positive on these MBS bonds. So they can borrow at SOFR plus 10 basis points from the government and then immediately roll that into mortgage-backed securities and earn some profit. So I think they will do that, and I think the spread will narrow. So that's why I bought those bonds.
And so if people want to look into that, that's the net interest margin, right? When we were talking about like how banks make money, or one of the ways they make money.
Yeah, it plays into the net interest margin. Like currently, the net interest margin is negative because you want to borrow at the short end of the curve and lend long, but the curve's inverted. But these mortgage-backed securities are still providing a positive spread.
Cool. Did not see that coming. I'm back in the Bitcoin pair trades. I'm back, baby. Yeah, the market's been kind of a shit show, to put it lightly, and it's kind of confusing. Are we going up? Are we going down? It's hard to have conviction in a lot of stuff, but I have a lot of conviction in the relative strength of Bitcoin at the moment. I was checking out the inverse BTC dominance chart. Just going to TradingView, 1 divided by the BTC dominance chart. It's basically just a chart of alt strength when you look at it that way, and it is just doesn't look good.
So what vehicles did you use on the short leg of the pair?
I think I am short Engine, ADA, Matic, Cardano, ETH, and one other. I forgot the other one.
So you pulled a basket.
Yeah, I did a basket. I think there's always a risk when you do one that they release some update or something and they just scam pump the price and you get wrecked.
Those are all actually all but 2 of those are part of my short basket that I always like to go into.
Yeah, I just like to trade because I think there's like 3 scenarios and you win in 2 of them. I think we can go up and Bitcoin can just go up more, which I think is happening now anyway, right? And if we go down, Bitcoin's going to go down less. That's a given, right? So the only way you lose in this trade is if we go up and we have like a mega alt season,
right?
Which I just don't really see in the cards right now.
That would be short central for like a Knickerbonny type. You see like an alt season happen.
Can I ask you a few questions about your trade real quick?
Yeah.
So one, are you worried about the Arbitrum airdrop dropping to a bunch of degens who would prefer altcoins?
They're probably not going to pile right into Bitcoin.
I don't think they're piling into. I mean, like you could argue that Matic might get something from the ZK trade that's been going on. I still think it doesn't look good, but like Cardano is not going to benefit from the Arbitrum.
Okay, so I agree with that. That's why I still hold the.
I'm actually long a bunch of Arbitrum. Like I've gotten a ton of ETH out of my portfolio. I've converted most of my ETH into like Arbitrum coins and sold a lot of it for cash.
You mean like GMX, Magic?
Yeah, I hold GMX, Magic. I bought some Grail, and I bought one of the weird plays I bought was Joe. Actually, you remember Trader Joe?
Yeah.
Trader Joe moved to Arbitrum.
They were an Avalanche.
They're
decks.
getting a huge amount of trading volume. Like the fees in their pools are ridiculous, and I think they're kind of an interesting outside pick for the Arbitrum airdrop season, which I think we're going to talk about a little later. So maybe we can.
Well, yeah, I think we will. Another question about your trade. For every dollar of Bitcoin you're long, are you an equal dollar short on that basket you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. So you're playing it straight.
Yeah, just delta neutral.
Cool.
Playing it straight.
Playing it straight.
But yeah, I think like I'm curious if like GMX, Magic, they all are going to get a bunch of tokens, and I wonder if they're going to use it for rewards, like additional rewards in their system, and if that'll drive more usage, more fees to them. We'll see.
I look forward to chatting about it.
Yeah.
Are you
Perhaps-
still skewed short on that ADA?
Yeah, I made a
Bitcoin?
mistake, and I just can't get myself ass backwards out of it. But
I think you'll be rewarded if you just exert some patience.
yeah, I think patience is key in this one. It's volatile, which is fine. So
Yeah, I overtraded that one. I'd be up bigly right now, and I get out of it for no reason. Silly.
And then last question to wrap up, Eric, how did you express your long mortgage-backed security trade?
That was using a mortgage-backed security ETF. MBB is the ticker symbol. The risk with that one is that you start to get a little further out on the yield curve. So there's some duration there, meaning you're exposed to interest rate risk, which I don't love. Sort of always been playing on this like 3 month and shorter on the treasury curve, but now I'm going out to like 7 years, and it's basically playing the spread narrowing more so than just the yield curve.
Okay.
So Nick, I was thinking, I see you have some FOMC overview.
Yeah.
There. And if there's a specific part to dig into that you found most interesting
Sure.
to explore,
So top line, they raised a 0.25% for the Fed funds target rate. I don't think that was a surprise. Market already accepted that in.
what was that, like an 85, 90% probability?
Yeah, I
for
think
most
by the
people?
time it before it was about to get announced, the market had already priced it in for the most part. So not a surprise there. In the notes they released, it seemed like they had revised it to be a little more dovish, as in maybe they might pause a little sooner. Then Jay Powell came out and he was a little more specific. He mentioned that there may be some, and he said emphasis on may and emphasis on some more interest rate hikes. I think like overall there wasn't that much I think newsworthy stuff. They're just gonna wait to see if this little mishap we had with SVB is gonna cause tightening in the credit markets. We talked about this last money episode, where we said, hey, these regional banks, they're further out on the risk curve. They do a lot of lending to commercial businesses, industrial, real estate, et cetera. They're probably going to pull back. So they're also wondering, like we are, what effect that is going to have. He acknowledged that effect of that credit tightening is essentially equal to an interest rate hike. So he's also curious what's going to happen. To me, the pointed part was that all the participants of the Federal Reserve Board, they put this dot plot of like where they expect interest rates to go, and they expect one more rate hike, but most importantly, they do not show any rate decreases, which the market is pricing in. So right now, there's a disparity between what the market thinks and what the Fed thinks. In his commentary, he said the participants flat out do not see a rate decrease this year. So we'll see. They're playing a little chicken, the market and the Fed, and I thought that was kind of the main through line. Other small comments he made is like, he think this BTFP program, he's like, this is not QE. QE is major purchases of treasuries. This is what we see as a temporary usage.
BTFP, remind me.
Buy the fucking pause. No, I forget.
I was trying to come up with something.
I actually don't remember what it stands for. But
I don't either, but it is.
I want it to be that.
Yeah, it's basically just bailing out the depositors of these banking institutions.
Got it.
So I don't know. Do you guys see anything else interesting? Like it was kind of as expected, like 25 basis point rate hike and Powell kind of resetting expectations.
No, it went exactly as I thought it would. I was actually surprised how much the market dumped because it was pretty predictable he was going to do 25. It was priced in he was going to do 25. And I thought like the presser was like maybe slightly more dovish than hawkish. So kind of weird how hard we puked. I didn't have too much time to look into that. I was just kind of trading all day, basically. But nothing strange.
For me, the bigger thing at play right now is like understanding how liquidity is changing as like the Fed balance sheet increases with the BTFP versus the landscape that we're looking at that just looks incredibly bearish. But then you have this like new injection of liquidity question mark, like because like people are also wondering like, is this QE? It doesn't seem like it because this is not free money, right? Like these banks have to pay for these loans.
Yeah, I mean that's the central question I think of what we're going to talk about today. At like the very essence of it is like, is this like a liquidity bonanza again, and is Bitcoin going to save us from it? I mean, for people who don't know, like the program quite simply is that banks have a bunch of bonds that are wildly underwater. They, you buy them at 100 cents on the dollar. Now they're worth 80. And you can't fund withdrawals. So the Fed's going to give you 100 cents on the dollar for your loan, even though it's only worth 80, as a way to kind of keep them afloat. And there's a big debate going around, like, is this QE? Is this like liquidity positive? What's the effect going to be on crypto and risk assets in general? So that's kind of where we're at right now. And it's been interesting listening to, I guess Arthur Hayes and Balaji have kind of been two of the more vocal people on Twitter. Balaji especially, and he's really doing the rounds in the podcast realm at the moment.
Before, just one quick thing, Arma, before we get into that. Chairman Powell got a Eric Johansson question asked specifically about commercial real estate loans on banks' balance
Yeah, how do
sheets.
those look, Jerome?
He said, while these commercial bank loans are rolling over, the concentration is small, and he doesn't think it's even comparable to Silicon Valley Bank. So timestamp it. Remind me in 90 days. Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's see
we'll
how that plays
see,
out.
because I saw there was like 1.4 trillion coming due from these commercial loans within the next 3 years, and we know that banks do not want to refinance these things that are probably underwater already. So like, we'll see.
Yeah.
He said inflation was transitory too. So
He also said they wouldn't raise rates until 2024.
Yeah. They never say the stuff they believe or that they're gonna do, and it's
Well,
it never ends. Same shit, different day.
That's a key part of what Balaji has been talking about, right? So, I mean, to kind of switch gears into that, and this is the meat of what I'm pretty excited about today is, so who's, very quick context and then an overview of really the kind of theory and how Balaji sees this playing out. And then let's dig into some discussions about the most sort of controversial aspects, the aspects that you guys might agree or disagree with the most, and maybe even where we agree and disagree the most. But for those people that don't know, Balaji kind of rise to fame over the last few years. He was the founder of a company called Earn.com. It was actually previously a crypto mining company that failed, pivoted, became Earn.com. Earn.com sold to Coinbase. Balaji took the CTO role. They didn't have a CTO at the time. He's a brilliant guy, PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford. Just really off the charts. As Erica said sometimes, one of the smartest people you've ever heard talk.
I hear him, and every take he has, I'm like, this is right. Until now.
So one of the things I thought was interesting was when SVB failed, Balaji was one of the most vocal people that took a contrarian view, and that was that this was caused by the Fed, while everyone else was just blaming this tech bro bank of mismanagement. And that was telling because Balaji decided to take a bet. He didn't propose it. He took a bet from that Medlock guy. Is that his name?
I think so, yeah.
Medlock. For $1 million, that Bitcoin will be $1 million in 90 days. He is calling for hyperinflation and ultimately hyper Bitcoinization. And what he's ultimately saying is that dollars will be worthless soon, just like what has happened in many other countries. The analogy, the example he likes to use is Argentina, very prosperous nation, and going through something akin to like what Venezuela went through. And he's Paul Revere saying the printing is coming and has been saying this, and the Fed is not to be trusted. Now, his proposal is if you trust the Fed, then keep your dollars and move on. But if not, buy Bitcoin, get off the exchanges, most importantly, self-custody. And this is a very important part of his theory because he believes that the centralized exchanges and the large banks that the Fed is forcing us to move our funds to is like a Venus flytrap, which I think is a really interesting part of his argument. And my tinfoil wants to get engaged in that part. The response to this so far, hopefully this episode is a different response to it, because the only response I've seen is very personal ad hominem attacks about his character, about his virtue, about his lack of character, about his ulterior motives.
On the podcast, or like you're talking about on Twitter?
On Twitter.
Yeah.
On podcasts, no one debates him.
Most people just listen to him.
They just listen to him,
Yeah.
and he runs through his slides.
I feel like that's what you're supposed to do on a podcast.
People give Lex Friedman shit all the time for not challenging his guests more.
Yeah, there's plenty in what he's saying that deserves pushback.
There's plenty that people should be pushing back on, and we love our Bankless boys and David Hoffman in particular. They just did a great episode together. I was at the end of it curious, what do you think, David? What do you guys think? Because everyone's listening to Balaji, but no one has a good counter. So I hope we unpack that. Or people are just completely dismissing and just laughing and saying this is a 0% likelihood and it's all BS. Now, I myself assumed that this was for PR. I posted this in the Discord community. I said, this is brilliant and it's just a PR move. But that was before hearing him speak. And what has changed my mind is actually listening to him speak on some of these recent interviews on Bankless on Pomp. So, and a couple last things here. Why Bitcoin? Why does he say that? It's the household name. It's trusted. This is not a time where it's about the tech. It's about a store of value that is self-custody, that is off the system, that is not through the establishment, and that we as individuals can have sovereign ownership of. He points to many examples of how these things happen quickly and suddenly. And, like the Eurozone guy saying everything is fine is kind of the last move before everything is not. Another example he had was like the Fed exploring, the article about the Fed exploring guaranteeing all deposits, which is related to what we were just talking about, more printing, basically infinite money, and a CBDC now confirmed to be coming in July. So everything is moving towards centralization. Everything is moving towards CBDC. Everything is moving toward a more authoritarian system and control of finance. Everything is allowing crypto-friendly banks to fail, so there's no way out. And then the White House just came out and gave a statement that crypto is worthless just now, like right after this. Then the Fed comes out and says the banks are fine, everything is secure, and there's obviously a move here to say the system is secure and crypto is worthless. Don't hit the exit button. Don't run to Bitcoin. So I don't know. It's a lot to swallow. He's basically proposing the end of the entire financial fiat system. That's heavy.
In 90 days.
Yeah, in 90 days. Now, I think he took the 90-day I think the CBDC has a big part to play in that 90-day. But I think he did that just for the sake of also it moves you move.
He's
when you
trying to
hear
give
that.
a sense of urgency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Steven says, per our text thread, there is a 0.0001% chance that Balaji is
way
right.
more zeros. Way more zeros. It's virtually as close as like. Okay,
When you say, if you can clarify to kick this off, when you say Balaji is wrong, I take that. I immediately want to attack that because I'm like, everything Balaji is saying is right in so many ways. Are you saying he's wrong that it happens in 90 days and you're picking at particulars, or are you saying the entire thing is fucking hogwash?
Well, no, the entire thing isn't hogwash, right? And you have to kind of agree on what we're talking about here, right? Because there's a sort of Trumpism in what Balaji says, where the literal words he's saying aren't correct, but it's well, don't pay attention to what he's saying. Pay attention to what he means, right? So if you do that, then sure, you could kind of be generous, be yeah, at the core he's right. But if we're saying in 90 days the dollar is going to hyperinflate and Bitcoin is going to $1 million, he's 100,000,000% wrong, and it's almost like an irresponsible thing to do. Because I think he's causing people to potentially take financial risks that they can't. I think there's a very, 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 very good chance that I would guess there's an 80% chance that Bitcoin is worth less money in 90 days than it is today. The dollar is going to go up against Bitcoin.
Right. That's a better
versus hyperinflation. Right. So he's leading people off a financial cliff in a way. When you invest in stuff, there's a thing called path dependency when you trade. Well, it's more when you trade, right? If you invest and you have a long time horizon, it sometimes doesn't matter what road you go to get there. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, but eventually it goes up and you're good, right? If you're somebody who's moved to, oh my God, I have to take action, you take a mortgage out or you use leverage to buy and the price goes down before it goes up, that matters a lot because you're liquidated now and you're screwed. You've made a horrible mistake, right? So
that's a great point. Imagine all these people who said, I got to get rid of my worthless fiat and I got to get into Bitcoin. And in 90 days, Bitcoin's down against the dollar. And they're just what the fuck just happened to me?
So I like this point of it's irresponsible versus responsible. The man feels a responsibility, and that appears to be, if we take what he's saying at face value, and I think his character stands the test and proves that he really has very little to gain from this. It's not about, I don't think this is about money for him.
I don't think it's about money for him either, but I do think the PR matters.
He thinks that, I do think the PR matters too. He thinks that he's doing this noble act that is responsible, because if he doesn't do it, people are going to end up with worthless dollars. So it's a very binary way of looking at the situation. You're saying because the likelihood is so low that the dollar hyperinflates to the value that he's suggesting, it is obviously much smarter to hold dollars, unless the other side of the trade takes place, which is like, the dollar is worthless because things happen slowly and then suddenly. And per his theory, these things happen overnight. He points to Dalio's
Okay,
work
can I pick at that specifically?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things in his thing
This
that's
is the
wrong,
thing that
right?
I care about.
He's
that
like,
pointing out.
okay, look at Lebanon, right? Or look at like Lebanon's a great example because he's like, look at this, the dollar just went to zero overnight because it was pegged, and when they took off the peg, it went shoo, right? In reality, there was black markets where over time it was like if you look at hyperinflation, it happens over the course of many months, but more often than not, years. The idea that you go from nothing to hyperinflation in 90 days, in spite of what he says, is not supported like anywhere that I can ever find in history. So that's a good specific example of something he says that's just flat out not true. The other thing I take issue with is I don't know if this is like ignorance or what, and maybe I'm the ignorant one, but like as far as I'm aware, banking crises where banks fail are deflationary, right? In rapid deflation, all assets crash. Like the monetary supply, like people have this like misunderstanding of the monetary supply, where all the dollars that are floating around out there just came off and were printed on a printing press. It's not true. Most of the dollars, the vast majority of dollars that are floating around out in the system come about through like fractionalized lending. Like people have deposits at a bank, the bank makes loans, people take that money, they put it in a bank, the bank makes it. So when banks go down, that money supply goes like, shoo. And like what the Fed was worried about when they put in this program was like a deflationary collapse, like a credit card. Like that's what they're worried about. We have this like super expanded money system that is just always on the verge of collapsing in upon itself like a freaking black hole, right? And the scenario he outlines, I think could maybe theoretically happen over the course of many years, but it would be preceded like every single time first by a deflationary collapse in which if you bought Bitcoin at 29K, you'd be sitting there with Bitcoin at like 4K.
Yeah, like
oh
all
my God,
assets.
I lost all my money. And you'd
All
probably
risk
puke it
assets
out on the way down and then you'd have nothing.
Aren't you removing the assumption that what he wants to happen would happen, which is that people move their dollars to Bitcoin? If people move to Bitcoin, then what he's saying...
This is another problem I have. If people move their dollars to Bitcoin, they collapse it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yes.
And
of what? Yeah.
Yeah. So and like, there's just so much I disagree
Like I
with
agree
here,
that
and
if
I'm
the
trying
dollars
to
just
focus.
disappear from the banks, like sure, deflationary like reaction to risk assets and assets as a whole, but if people have nowhere to go and they go to Bitcoin in huge swaths, which already seems to be this thing that is starting to reach the mainstream, then couldn't you see like widespread sort of adoption
But
of
that
Bitcoin?
would be
Couldn't you
bad
see-
if what he's saying causes the collapse and it wouldn't have collapsed otherwise. And one
So
in 100
that
people
right
get on the
there,
lifeboat and the
that-
other 99 people get ruined.
That's
not a
interesting.
good outcome.
That's interesting.
And I'm not even saying that's the thing I disagree with the most, but like, that's not a good outcome. Like the outcome where this happens is not a good outcome, right? Like you end up in this weird plutocratic world where like there's like 100 people who control like half the freaking supply of Bitcoin. Nothing is distributed evenly. It's like way worse than the inequality of the world that currently exists. I feel like this isn't something that people think about, right? And then what happens? Like if you're the only guy in town who has Bitcoin and everybody knows it and everybody loses anything, you better get the hell out of there. You're going to get like murdered.
I would love to
It's
come
not
back
good.
to that. I want to hear what you think about all this, Nick. Like, I really want to come back to that though. Like, what does the world look like in this plutocratic society where Balaji and his buddies own so much of the Bitcoin supply? But
Yeah, I mean, that was my first reaction. I literally wrote it down as I was watching the Bankless interview with him. I'm like, is his scenario that much better? It sounds worse. We can go into that. I think in general, he just takes a very large logic leap that just leaves me behind. So he's saying all of the small banks are insolvent. Okay, all the money moves to these big banks. Okay, like I'll accept that assumption. That's fine. All the money goes in these big banks. Now, and then the Fed has to print more money to make everyone solvent, including the people in these big banks. Okay. And now the Fed is like, or everyone's thanking the Fed for giving me my money back. And then all the money is concentrated in these larger banks and institutions. Essentially, he talks about the Fed having like basically server keys to the whole monetary system, can plug people out, turn people off. I just don't see where we go to hyperinflation. Is he saying that we're going to print, is the balance sheet going to 10x in the next 90 days in order to cover these bank runs that are supposedly going to continue to happen? Yeah. And so that's the part of the logic where I get left behind and I just don't see it. So I also agree that credit crunches, they flat out are deflationary, not inflationary, which is what would happen. It's probably happening now. I'm more worried about deflation than inflation personally, if we look at the whole macro environment. The other thing that I feel like he fails to address, and it hasn't been brought up in any critiques, is that currencies are relative. They don't work in a vacuum. They're not absolute. Dollar goes up, dollar goes down. The way the dollar is valued is against a basket of other currencies, including the euro and the yuan and everything else. And he fails to address what happens in a world where this happens. What happens to those other countries? And what happens to their currencies? And we just went through a bout of inflation, a small one, but we saw what happened. The dollar went up in value. That's because there's this large market of demand for dollars, the euro dollar market, in which all these other countries needs dollar to trade.
Would that still be true with hyperinflation? Would the dollar still command? I mean, there's examples of like, look at they're electing to use the yuan in this example or whatever.
The idea that the dollar goes into hyperinflation and like the rest of it just doesn't make any sense. Like as Nick said, like when there's panic, there's demand for dollars. Like demand for the currency is the opposite of hyperinflation.
How much are we leaning on the way things have always been though? Like that's an example. Another example is like you as an American, like this is the worst thing in the world to have happen if it happens. How much do our own just like cognitive comforts come into place of like wanting to maintain the status quo here?
Right. But we have to lean on the fact that the dollar is by and far and large the reserve currency, and not just a reserve currency, the currency of exchange. Like when other countries need to buy raw materials, they need to buy them in dollars. And in all of his cases, he showed a chart of like hyperinflation, and I quickly glanced at it. It was a quick screen, but I was like, well, in no cases were those the reserve currency. And this is a totally different scenario. And so I thought about this old episode from Macro Voices, Anas Al-Haji. He's like an oil expert. And he goes back and people were challenging him on the fact of the dollar being used in pricing oil. And he talks about that there wasn't this old school agreement between US and Saudi saying, hey, we'll provide you security if you price oil in dollars. He's like, no, the dollar is just the only tool that can be used to price a commodity like oil. And he says they need three things. You need deep liquidity. You need relative stability against other currencies. And then third, you need global acceptance. Maybe Bitcoin might have some global acceptance. Liquidity? Are you fucking kidding me? Like the whole asset class is just over $1 trillion. Like there's not enough liquidity for this to be used worldwide. And relative stability, I mean, F on relative stability. I'll add a fourth to that.
That's currently though. That's still current.
Well, on the way there, he's assuming that we're just going to bypass those things somehow.
Yeah.
And there's going to be enough relative stability in the coin that's, by the way, going to go
Right.
from 25,000 to or 28,000 to $1 million. But I'll add a fourth criteria is that the companies, the countries that use it as trade or people use it as trade, they need that currency to be able to buy them stuff. The best example is what Saudi Aramco made $122 billion last year. Guess what one of the first things they wanted to do with that money is? They want to start a new airline and need to purchase over 30 Boeing airplanes. Well, they can't do that with yuan. They can't do that with Bitcoin. They needed US dollars to buy airplanes from Boeing. So I guess all that to just say that there are basic requirements for this stuff to be used in trade, and we have to lean on those. We have to lean on the fact that the whole global economy operates in dollars. We can't just say, I don't think it's a cognitive bias. It's just fact.
I think that we're still holding on to so much of the way that we see things. I do think there is a bit of a cognitive bias here, or maybe a better way to put it is like Balaji's argument is so extreme and does contain such a deep ulterior motive that it's difficult to even entertain the concept. Because the guy is a huge Bitcoin maxi. The entire system of society that he's laying out, it is sitting on this happening. And on the one hand, he's saying, I hope this doesn't happen. And on the other hand, he sort of, in a weird, sort of dark way, potentially needs it to happen. Because he is this like modern day, wants to be known as this like modern day Nostradamus type character, is a bit of a doomsdayer. He likes to make his predictions. He had an incredible prediction that was very accurate around the pandemic. I think that what we're missing is that for everything needs to fundamentally change in the society that Balaji is laying out. Eric, you said that a key part that was revealed to you was you're like, everything this guy has said has been so right to me for so long, but this was like an example of like, no, he actually doesn't know what he's talking about. What were the ones that stood out?
So like I've listened to him on so many podcasts, but it was this bankless episode that was illuminating for me, right? Because like, first of all, you hold these like idols in reverence, right? Like I thought Balaji, oh my God, he like knows everything about everything. And then when he starts talking about the Federal Reserve and he starts talking about basically just like money in general, I'm just like, oh, you know less than me about this. And that was like the first time that I ever thought that. And it was just so clear to me. So first of all, Balaji, like, I think that he is probably directionally correct. I think that putting up the bit signal and putting a 90-day sort of deadline on it is maybe the stupidest thing he could have done. Like, I get that he's like trying to raise the alarm or whatever, but like, it's not going to happen in 90 days. It's not like all that I heard from him was Satoshi's original argument, which is probably right. Like, I just heard Satoshi and I was like, yeah, I get it. And that's all he's saying. But he's trying to put 90 days on it because he thinks that there's going to be this massive bank run on small regional banks. That's already stopped. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, the Federal Reserve has already backstopped that. There's going to be no bank runs anymore, as far as I'm concerned, at least not for a while, like until sort of this next credit wave comes through, and then maybe that we will see.
What about this sort of Venus flytrap CBDC?
So that is more interesting. I actually think the CBDC is a I think it's a positive. Like, I looked at that, I was like, oh, you have finally a competing technology that's forcing you to act and it's forcing you to improve. Like, we want immediate transactions. We want immediate settlement. We want to be able to do things in a right way. Like, I see where the red flags can be down the road where like this could be dangerous, of course. But like, all I saw with Balaji was like, you just for the first time learned that like banks don't have enough to cover all their deposits. Like, I felt like James Franco with the noose around his neck in the meme, just being like, first time, huh?
That's the best meme ever.
But did you get the gap in his argument from, okay, yes, we might print more money. Maybe we print a lot of money, but I still don't understand how that goes into hyperinflation.
Okay, so there's so much wrong with the argument. Like the very fundamental premise that this bailout program is even like liquidity positive is not a given. Like, that's something I wanted to, like, it's something I haven't wrapped my head around, but like, if people have deposits at the bank and the bank is underwater and loses all their money, there's a hole in the economy, right? If you come in and just backstop that hole so people don't lose their deposits, like, is that really like a bonanza?
You're back
of
to
like
par, is
money?
what you're saying.
Didn't you just fill in the hole in the ground? Like, the problem with COVID is that they filled in a hole. It was a big hole, and they filled it with too much sand, and it became like a mountain. But they could have easily filled it with not enough sand, and then we could have easily had a deflationary event, like a bigger one than we had, and maybe like a more permanent one. So it's his very premise is not even something I can take at face value in that regard. Like, the very idea that this is QE part 2 is like, I don't
So
know.
that liquidity part, this is going to be a slight deviation off the Balaji topic, but I want to talk about the liquidity part because I've been thinking about that too, where like, yeah, if you just shore up the balance sheets such that we get back to par and depositors can get their money out whenever they please, that is liquidity neutral. But if banks take what's available for them, meaning like way beyond what depositors are requiring, then isn't that liquidity positive? Because like what they are allowed to take is dollar for dollar every government-backed loan that's on their balance sheet. Their withdrawals on deposits are not that much. So this could be more than par.
Yeah, I honestly don't have good knowledge about what you're saying, so I don't want to comment on it. But it's not something I've heard anybody talk about, and I've already heard of banks just giving back loans after taking them already and like repaying them. So like I don't know if there's an appetite for banks to just go out there and YOLO like that, or even if they're allowed to. So I'd be pulling stuff out of my butt if I commented on it, honestly.
I think it's maybe safer to say, like, is it enough QE to go into hyperinflation mode?
Oh, I think it's 0% on that. I was more thinking about asset prices.
Let's like remind everybody as well that like QE was the arguably like it was like deflationary to an extent. I feel like people still don't even understand what the hell QE is. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole at this point. I want to throw Balaji a bone a little bit.
All right,
because
we
like
get a bone.
there is stuff.
The Balaji bone.
Yes, that sounded oddly sexual.
I know. You can count on me for that, Tiger.
We did an episode last year on a topic called financial repression, which I very much believe is going to be a thing in the future. And I very much believe that there's been a coordinated attack on the on-ramps of crypto. They're trying to prevent people from getting into and out of crypto very easily.
Clear.
That to me is, I totally agree with that. And I totally agree that people should make a concerted effort to get some of their net worth outside of the system, to get outside money. Where I disagree is that outside money should be like in Bitcoin or like Ethereum or something right now. I think like what I have done personally is I've gotten outside money, and it's in like dollar equivalents. It's like in stable coins, because if we get to the scenario Balaji is describing,
Which one? The one that just got depegged, or like a different, different
88
one?
cents dollar coin.
Yeah, that spread your stable coins out. They are.
So let's underline that though.
Yes,
Like,
there are ways, but you can also like you can make something. I'm not going to go down that road, but the point is like,
because you believe in the dollar more than you believe.
No, because I believe
in
that any event,
the stability of the dollar, though, more than like that the dollar will win versus like risk assets.
I mean, this goes into it. We also did an episode on the dollar milkshake theory,
Yeah.
right? And one of the core tenets of the dollar milkshake theory is that when the crisis happens, the dollar goes up. Everything goes down versus the dollar first. You want to hold dollars when the crisis hits. And then when the crisis is at its peak and then they send in the cleanup crew to fix everything, that's when you want to get the fuck out of all of your dollars, get the hell out of all your bonds, and then buy the other stuff.
What Balaji says happens the way he
But
says
it
it's going to
can't happen the way he says it's going to happen. It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
What are the parts of it that are the most wrong? Like, why? walk me through why it just can't play out the way that he says it's going to play out.
The number one thing is that like a failure of the banks is going to be deflationary. It is going in like call up M2 money, call up M1 money supply, right? M1 money supply, mostly made up of like checkable deposits, is in a nosedive right now. There has been no time in the history of the US where M1 has nosedived and like we haven't gone into like a recession or some sort of like contraction, right? Like when people pull deposits from the banks, when deposits leave the banks, right? Either because they're trying to go into Bitcoin or because they're just like,
what about
I
that
need
chart he showed of like Bitcoin versus the dollar and like the movement toward Bitcoin?
Yeah,
I think that chart is stupid. If you take any asset that's gone up 100,000 times in a 10-year period, it's going to be up versus every single asset on Earth. Of course it is, but it's important to note it that Bitcoin has only existed during a period of up-only massive liquidity. It has never existed in a period of negative liquidity. We are in a new paradigm right now. So you would be fool to like assume it's going to be exactly the same.
I don't even think that you're doing it justice because, like, honestly, that chart, it could.
Is it a chart? Would you describe it as a chart crime?
I don't. Like, I think you're describing it as a chart crime. I think it's actually pretty legit. And I think it's legit because the dollar is getting less and less valuable every day. We know that. And you've seen, like, just the dollar purchasing.
That's what I don't think we're hitting at.
Like a dollar purchasing power chart that doesn't include Bitcoin at all is down only.
Wait, can I defend this point? Because I hear this like a lot. And I just want to like everybody to imagine a thought exercise. Imagine America exists, right? And everybody has dollars and we're kind of like an isolationist, sort of like pre-World War II nation. Everybody's got dollars here and we're just doing our own thing, right? And imagine dollars can't be created. There's a fixed amount of dollars, right? And then the world becomes super global. Suddenly dollars start going all around the world. Suddenly demand for dollars starts skyrocketing. Everybody wants dollars. What happens to the value of the dollar? It goes up, right? And then what happens? People who already held dollars start becoming like massively, massively wealthy. People who don't have dollars are poor and they need to get dollars. The cost of stuff starts skyrocketing in the terms of people who don't have that. Like the fact that like we create lots of dollars, which makes dollars go down versus stuff over time because the adoption of the dollar also has gone up over the time. That is also a feature, right? Like when you trade in like options, right? You can basically have stability in the asset that you hold. You pay for it, right? If you want to reduce the volatility of your asset, right? You pay for it, right? There's a trade-off, right? That's kind of what's happening with the dollar. You are trading off this predictable decrease year on year for stability. But the stability is like a feature in a way, right? So like, and I'm not saying this is like an unabated good, but it gets a really bad rap. The alternative where we don't create dollars and then like there's like massive, and there already are dollar shortages, by the way. Like it's not this like rosy thing, right? It's not necessarily great. And I'm not advocating for, inflation is theft and all that, but like it's not quite what people make it out to be, I would say.
I mean, all that I can agree with, but even still, I think things that are priced in dollars, all else equal, will go higher in dollars as dollars are devalued.
Sure, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if people get stability.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying can also be factually correct. It's just
sure, but it's being put out there as a negative, right? Like nobody's like putting out the dollar down 98% chart, being like, "This is cool." Like everybody's trying to panic people and be like, "This is terrible."
So the current model, though, clearly is just like not sustainable. And I think that let's throw Balaji more bones. At least I would like to. The things about Balaji's argument that really resonate with me are ideologically the battle, what he's really fighting for is true. I like Steven's point of it just basically. Oh, no, sorry. Eric saying, which one you said to the Satoshi thing?
Oh, that was me.
Okay. It's on this side of the room. Are you married? I don't know.
Yeah. I have photos to prove that you were involved.
Inside joke if you're really paying attention. So You know, I like that because that's true. That's what there's a real ideological
But Satoshi
sort of
said
like
that
truth here.
10 plus years
I
ago.
get it. I
and
get it.
It's not happening in
But
90
what
days.
Sure.
But
And
why
I don't
did he
think
say 90
needs it
days?
to.
Like, why
Because
did he say 90 days?
It's like
it's irresponsible.
it's not. It doesn't necessarily have to be irresponsible.
It
if it
is.
moves people, okay. If the whole thing ended up biting people in the ass, if their dollar became so worthless and their literally
if
lives
Bitcoin became more worthless?
if they ended up living, if all the people that don't make this move end up living under an authoritarian regime that tells you when to spend money and how to spend money, then it's probably a good thing to have
In
gotten
90
out of the
days.
system. Again, I don't think that's the important part of the argument.
But like, here's why
I don't
shouldn't-
think
he
he
shouldn't have said
needs
here's
it
why I
to.
think it's important, because he said it. And when Bankless asked him about
No,
it,
wait a
he's like,
second.
he goes, I don't actually know about the 90 days thing. I don't know about that.
Well,
I have no
that's
idea about
correct.
it. It's like, then why even include it? Because you are right up until that point, and now it's done.
Well, then that's just misunderstanding him. The 90
No,
days.
why say it?
No, the 90 days is he's literally doing it for the cause. He's just doing it to get people
No, but
to
he
move.
was presenting an argument that, hey, there have been these cases within days, within weeks, within
Right.
months in which we go into hyperinflation. And
which were false.
He called it hyperinflation in 90 days. That's wrong. It's
Okay,
not going
wait
to
a
happen.
second. Okay, the Lebanon example is one. What about Argentina? What
They're
are
not
some
the
other-
reserve
Argentina's
currency of
false
the
too because
world.
they're not the reserve currency of the world. If you have debt denominated in a currency that you can't print, and then you go under, you can't print dollars, so you print pesos, and that's how you get right. Like
That's
we
why
are the
when-
that's
reserve
why it
currency.
says
you get
hyperinflation.
hyperinflation
We can print,
when you're
like,
on the opposite side
yeah,
of the reserve
it's
currency.
like it feels like there's like a very basic, and I feel like I'm like, am I stupid? Like, am I missing something basic? But like, I haven't seen anybody tell me how you get hyperinflation when you are the reserve currency and everybody's debt is denominated in your currency.
How rapidly can that change?
Decades, maybe?
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Certainly not 90 days.
And
I don't know about
Satoshi was calling
decades.
for it a decade ago, and it hasn't happened.
I think
That's the point.
Yeah, but
Like,
if
he's
there
just-
are pressures, if
he's
the
repeating
pressure
Satoshi.
cooker
So his
is
pressure
happening,
is bank runs, which
Yes.
are not happening anymore.
what if they did? That's the whole argument.
They're
but if
not.
they do, it's deflationary. That's
Okay,
the,
and
the
then
problem I
if
have.
if the reserve currency movement starts to shift and
Shift
other
from-
countries begin to move at, like, what? How does that look? If you had to play it out,
Okay, so one thing people fail to grasp is like how ubiquitous the dollar is. Like in a lot of ways, and I'll probably get shat on the internet for saying this, like the dollar is much more decentralized in a lot of ways than Bitcoin is, right? There's a massive
Hot take.
concentration of Bitcoin supply. There's a concentration in the people who mine it. Like the euro dollar system, for
and
example.
this is starting to go back to the kind of Balaji and his buddies owning the world. So if you can just
Yeah.
keep going in that direction.
like the euro dollar system, for example, is so opaque that like we don't know how many euro dollars
it's
there
also
even are.
larger than the domestic dollar system.
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah.
Right. It's this whole system
what
of
way?
dollar creation.
There are more dollars in foreign banks, and then they lend out in dollars, and so the euro dollar, it's meant to specify dollars held in European banks, but they're held in all places of the world. And so when you take out, when you look at the deposits in foreign banks and how much they lend out and how much dollar denominated debt they created, it's greater than what you would call maybe our domestic dollar system.
Yes.
And Steven's right, it is opaque. It's not like you can go look up a number for it.
Yeah, there's just people out there creating dollars all over the world, they're just creating their own dollars. And like euro dollars aren't euros, they're dollars outside of the system, as Nick said. This process is not something that the government has like a whole lot of control over. Like people, again, like think that dollars are these things that we print. There's a money printer and they print them all. It's far more complicated than that. Like the distribution of the system, the deep liquidity, as Nick said, the bond market, like these are enormous barriers to entry, right?
And what makes Bitcoin not as decentralized as people believe? Is it just
There's a just massive concentration
pools.
of holders,
Yeah.
right? Like the distribution of dollars versus the distribution of Bitcoin holders is like a joke. Like there's like a few whales who have like enormous concentrations of the supply, right?
But couldn't you argue that like with the dollars, like there's a clear like centralized entity and force behind the whole thing that at any point in time has the knobs and levers to be able to create the sort of centralization that it needs, and that's exactly what he's saying is happening?
No, because
the
like
function.
the whole argument for why Bitcoin becomes a thing is because like it's a meme. Like enough people just meme it into existence and use it.
That's what he's doing though, right?
Right, but that's what the dollar is. It's the best meme in the world. Like it is everywhere. Everyone has memed it into existence. It almost
Can we
can't be
agree
unmemed
that they're
at this
both
point.
Ponzi's?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No, I
say yes.
don't.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't agree
could
that
you-
the
oh.
dollar is a Ponzi.
They're
Bitcoin is a
both
Ponzi.
absolute Ponzi's.
Totally.
Balaji is just pushing a different Ponzi.
But like,
It's
I don't
just
even care about that
ridiculous.
argument really. Like we haven't mentioned ETH once. I mean ETH Maxi. So I have some Bitcoin, but I have way more ETH. Like I think if Balaji's situation plays out the way that he's saying, like I'm going to be okay either way because like money outside the system is
Yeah.
going to thrive. Like ETH, if Bitcoin's $1 million per coin, what do you think ETH is? 1,800? Like
He had
no.
an interesting point about like Bitcoin only zones that I thought, yeah, I could see that. That makes sense.
I just can't. Sorry, I'm having so much trouble with this. So let's say we're on the path to hyperinflation. Okay, we go from 5 or 6% to 12%.
We officially grinded Nick's gears. This is
yeah.
What do you think?
He did the eyebrow
He
rub.
did like a full like
I mean, what do you think the Fed is going to do if we see 12% inflation?
The same thing they've been doing.
they've been
Increase
doing.
interest
Raise
rates.
rates.
And what does that do? It increases the demand for dollars because all of these countries, imagine every internationally trading company in every other country has debt in dollars.
But
the
doesn't it-
cost of that debt goes
Doesn't it
up.
also lead to like SVB 10x?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go with that.
That's bad.
Okay, so
So we end up with 4 banks.
who cares?
Yeah, everybody
I-
else is-
I-
everybody
get
else
it.
is
that
forbearance.
that does not, to me, that part does not necessarily back the argument that we go into hyperinflation.
Got it. So you end up
It-
with
it
4
does-
banks, but the dollar doesn't become as devalued as he would like you to believe.
Let's
because
say
demand continues outside, like generally.
Yeah, I mean, we just went through a stint of it where the dollar went up because the cost of dollars went up, interest rates went up because the Fed saw inflation coming, and the only instrument they have to blunt demand. This is assuming that deflation doesn't happen, and because all this deposits flee these, like, you know, the significant majority of banks, and they go into 4 major banks who, by the way, are not going to lend to the same people that those other banks lend. So assuming the deflationary environment does not occur, in that case, if there is inflation, the Fed will raise interest rates to blunt demand if the deposit run doesn't do it itself. And so that's where I just get so stuck. And then again, like, just as like absence of acknowledging that currencies are relative to each other just makes it tough.
So
Now-
under that scenario, I'm earning 16% on my 3-month T-bills. Bitcoin's down at 7K. I'm just waiting for my time to pounce. Like that's how I'd be playing it like that.
Now listen, on a
how I
long-term
hope to
scale,
play it.
you know, I see that you know, he shows this chart where purchasing power goes down with the dollar, and I'm like, wow,
Yes.
that is right. That does kind of suck, right? But that
Blows.
right, but that assumes that earning power, that real earnings do not keep up with it. And you know, you could argue for the past couple of decades, it really hasn't.
I don't know.
I don't know, right now-
You're also
I'm-
not.
I'm
the
having
dollar's
trouble.
supposed to be a medium of exchange. It's not supposed to
Right.
be a
It's
thing
not a
you
store of
keep
value.
all of your worth in forever. That's not.
Dollars aren't
That's
storage
a fundamental misunderstanding of like what the purpose of a freaking currency is. Right. The purpose of a currency is to have like liquidity and this like uniform acceptability and to like facilitate. It's not supposed to be there for you to keep. And this whole like, oh, the dollars, you could just buy stocks, right? If you have dollars in the United States, you could just buy stocks. Stocks have been a fantastic protector. Like Arthur Hayes' interview
Have
on
been.
Bankless was like a
Have
much
been.
more
That's similar to what you said
honest
about Bitcoin.
take on everything. Like, cause he was like, he acknowledged the path dependency. He's like, yeah, you know, this probably goes to hell before they do this, the thing that like launches it, right? He acknowledged that what you want to do in a broader theme is to be outside the system and to own real things. And I agree with those 2 principles. You do want to be outside the system and you do want to try to own real stuff. And you want to also try to own stuff that is you want to have debt. Like you want to buy a house and then have them print
Right.
like infinite dollars and stuff
can-
like that.
To that point, Anthony Pompliano, presumably after he interviewed Balaji, he put a tweet. The cost of living in 1971. Average rent, $150 a month. Gasoline, 40 cents a gallon. New car, $3,500. New house, $25,000. Harvard tuition, $2,600 a year. But to Stephen's point, the S&P 500 was $98. So yeah, if you were just holding dollars and not doing anything, you're screwed. If you invested in the S&P 500, you're net up, right? Maybe the tuition and the house could be arguable, but everything else, you're up.
Yeah, because dollars aren't stores of value.
Correct.
You should not hold your wealth
I think
in
that's
dollars.
point to buttress that argument.
Yeah, we'd be better off having like a nationally coordinated campaign to just get everybody to own stocks. You know, just don't like teach people how to invest or like invest for them in some way. I don't know. Like some people participate in the upside of the equities markets and assets and others don't. And when you go through a 5-decade period where you undergo this policy that juices assets, then it's like shouldn't be surprising to
So
people
hold on,
that like
because
some
this
people don't get
is
them.
like a pretty cool point for me to throw in a little wrench here, because like I agree with the idea of owning productive assets, things that generate cash flows, things that have utility. Bitcoin is neither of those. So like, why own any Bitcoin?
Well, only for the.
I think it is a great question. Why own Bitcoin? I think it is a thing that people like overlook. Like, yes, it is scarce. Yes, it is portable, and like, yes, it is this great unit of account. Like, I get all those things, and I don't think it's worthless at all, right? But it's especially useless in like an apocalypse scenario versus like ETH is more useful in an apocalypse scenario, right? Because one of the things that's overlooked about Bitcoin is you can't exchange it trustlessly. It's true that I can send it to you and do all this, but like you can't have a smart contract. Like, what am I going to do? I have to meet you in person with a gun probably to pay you with my Bitcoin.
So many guns.
And then we wait for an hour before it actually arrives.
And then yeah, like at least with ETH, you could be like fully anonymous on the internet. You can transact and you can have like all the other elements of finance. Bitcoin is basically good for like hoarding.
Is that correct?
Well,
Hold
yeah,
on
there's
a
no-
second.
there's-
There's no way to facilitate a transaction between two.
yeah. How do
people?
you
No,
trade
Bitcoin
Bitcoin
doesn't
to
have
something else?
Bitcoin
I
doesn't
don't-
have smart contracts.
like
I know it doesn't have smart contracts, but what
Decentralized
if I just
exchange?
want to literally just, yeah, is there like, what would I
I can
do?
send.
Yeah,
we
what
can
would
send
you
it
do?
back and forth
We
to
can
each
send
other.
it back and forth.
Let's go through this thing. It's the apocalypse. We're in our bunkers. I've got guns. You've got Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We need to make an exchange. You don't trust me.
Okay, if I need the smart contract and if I need the escrow, yeah, I get it. Okay.
There's no trustless way to do the
Stacks.
interaction.
I don't know.
Just making a
Let
face.
the record show. Steven made a face.
All right. Can I? I just find this
It's
like
pretty good.
one part we haven't mentioned this that I find it really funny that like Balaji has anointed a monetary system that uses debasement as a way to keep the network running, to get away from a monetary system that uses, as he argues, debasement to keep the network running. So he's saying the way the Fed is keeping this running is by debasing the currency. Well, if we want to get like really into it, the way the network runs is Bitcoin debases the currency. It's not like it's the miners are earning in transaction fees. They're earning from inflation. And obviously, like it's pre-programmed inflation at a certain schedule that's supposed to stop at a certain time, but I still think it's ironic and it's funny enough to point out that
What I
the
like
same
I
train.
like getting back on the Balaji rails here.
Yeah.
One thing that I liked was the Twitter post that you guys linked in the Discord. I can't remember the guy's name, but he hosts a podcast that you guys both listen to.
Yeah, and Steven mentioned like this whole,
Yeah, what podcast was that?
that was Demetri
Demetri Kofinas.
Kofinas
Demetri
of
had a
Hidden
great.
Forces.
I thought it was a great
thought it
take
was
on this.
terrible.
I
You
love
thought
that
it was
Armand,
terrible,
It was
but it was
terrible.
Armand
It's a
posted in the
fantastic
Discord.
take.
that
I
this
love
was
the
like,
guy. That was his
What?
worst take
Okay,
ever.
This is a bad take.
explain why it was a bad take.
In 1846, there was a man named Balaji, and he
Sounds like
struck
a ad
forward
hominem
into
attack.
That's exactly how he wrote it. He made absolutely no counter argument.
No counter argument?
No counter argument.
Hold on.
No counter argument other than just being like, you and your buddies want to take over the world. This system isn't any better than the one that exists. This is the wrong way to do it. He's told him this is the wrong way to do it, but he did not
What
offer
is
any
incorrect
constructive
about
criticism.
what Demetri said specifically? Is anything he said wrong?
So
No, but that's not the point.
I think Balaji, like,
it
let's
was
go.
just not good.
Can I play like a
God.
moderator a little bit?
Yeah.
So Balaji is famous to me for saying this one thing. I think it's attributable to somebody else, but he talked about this idea of voice versus exit, right? Voice means you can change the system that you're in, or you can exit that system entirely, right? So
Yes.
he is doing the exit. Like he's actually doing exit by doing this whole Bitcoin
Yeah, this
strategy.
is every anarchist dream come true.
And I think that this guy Demetri was criticizing the exit because he was saying like,
Exactly.
hey, if you wanted to actually improve this, you would actually stay in the system and improve this system.
Can I
He
read
doesn't
just the
want
first?
to improve
Let's
it.
read the
So
tweet.
he's got
He
it's
doesn't
a,
want
it's
to
a long
improve it.
tweet, but I feel like if I read the first 2-3 sentences, it kind of encapsulates it. Demetri Kofinas says, when Balaji says he is ideologically driven, he is not lying. He and his comrades have an explicit political agenda to replace the dollar and bring about a new world order run by a plutocratic elite of free agents who remain removed from the obligations of citizenship and place. As ridiculous as this may sound to some people, it needs to be taken seriously, and the deeper motivations and causes behind it need to be understood.
It's not
And it
ridiculous
goes
at all.
on,
That
so
is
you
all
should check it out
100%
yourself.
correct.
It is 100% correct.
It is.
It is. I agree.
And other than all the stuff that I pointed out that's factually bad, this is also a good critique of why it's bad, you know?
The critique that he's making, what I tried to say, what I am saying is that it was a whimsical response about the issues with Balaji's ideological proposal of exiting the system. He is proposing that the man work on improving the system to not create like this absolute panic and frenzy of people who feel that the only answer is to exit the system. Demetri is saying that is not the answer. We need to work within the confines of what we have. We need to improve it. We need to be citizens of this world, of this country, and the establishment that exists. What Balaji is saying is fuck the establishment. That's what he's saying.
No, but what Demetri
And
is
I
saying
think
is the
that's-
end state of what Balaji wants is this dystopian plutocratic bullshit where like a bunch of multi-Uber billionaires who hoarded the Bitcoin have all of the fucking wealth, and they're
And
just
what are
these
they
like
gonna
free
do?
agents
What
that
are they gonna do
not
that's
bound by
so bad?
any of the physical like.
What's so good about what the Fed and the government have done for us? Why is it so much worse for Balaji and his friends to be in charge?
Society-
You guys both said that. What's so bad about Balaji and his friends being in charge?
Then
These
having
are
a-
intelligent people who don't have ulterior motives the way that that the Fed does. These
You're fast running the entire reason why you're suggesting like, we're going back to having like a monarchy.
Yeah,
like
well,
the whole
yeah.
reason the system exists is because we wanted to get away from a system where a powerful, entrenched, established elite of a few people ran the whole country, and this sort of like that's
just
why modern
described
society
the
exists.
world we live in. That's what it's become.
This is worse.
No, this is
What you're
like,
describing is way worse.
Balaji's is so much worse. And what I
don't know yet what I think about that, but I know that the world we live in
man.
is exactly that.
No,
You
it
know-
is not exactly that.
You know what it feels
is
like to me?
Very far.
It
from
feels
that.
like the little blonde white girls that are saying like defund the police, and they're like, and I'm like, you don't want to know what the world looks like without police. Like it gets fucking uglier.
You could be right. You could be right. But I can tell you that there's a lot of unhappy people, and just the way that there were with the police and defund police. You could be absolutely right. But the world that we've been living in is one where you can't trust a single word that you hear. The best interests of the citizens are not at all represented. The people that are in charge are their own little boys club. It's all old men. There's no women involved. They're all rich. They're all making money more than we are. They're not just taking their $150K a year. They're all multimillionaires. The whole thing is corrupt. And that's what he's trying to say. And not to mention the fact that like the Fed in and of itself, I mean, he actually gave a shout out to our old boy, Ron Paul, where this whole journey started. What is that book called? Something.
I forget it.
Just like Fuck the Fed. It's like a Fuck the Fed book. And Ron Paul, like, is where Nick and I like started our interest in any of this stuff in college. And I mean, I don't know. I just think like, is America the best example of it? Absolutely. Are there problems? Absolutely. Is the answer to hit the eject button and leave the system? I don't think so.
No, because
But
like
I do think that he's hitting at very important things.
he mentions the cancel-on effect. The people who are closest to the money printer end up with a large amount of the wealth, a disproportionate amount.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't understand how this is any different, because who's ever been closest or soonest to the Bitcoin minter,
Maybe the guy who started earn.com or whatever and Bitcoin mining company.
guess who's going to be like the richest by an order of magnitude?
It
Like,
is
in the last
very clear that he has a lot.
in the
of
last
Bitcoin.
5 years. I think Chamath admitted that at one point he thought he had 5% of all the Bitcoins in circulation.
That
And so-
Chamath did, or that Balaji did?
No, that Chamath himself had at one point. in the last 5 years, he's talked about it. So like, I just don't see, like, I don't know one person who owns 5% of all the wealth in the world.
That's very bad.
Imagine a society where all the hyper rich people have perfect, like there's no friction to just self segregate. You literally end up with that like Matt Damon movie where like within 5 years, all the uber billionaires are living in like some spaceship in the sky, and then all the poors are just fighting to the death on Earth because like
Elysium.
everybody, yeah, is Elysium. Like that's like
So-
what happens.
Wait a second. I
Matt
wanna make
Damon
sure,
gets up there.
I want to make sure we're being fair, because 5% today is what tomorrow when Bitcoin is $1 million.
Sure.
No, it's very important. It can't be dismissed that easily. It's like when Bitcoin is $26,000, owning 5% is one thing versus when the entire world has adopted it as their store of value.
Right. We're talking about that the current system, the distortions in the current system have led to a point where there's a big gap between the top 1% and the bottom 10%. Okay, right? We've led ourselves there. What I'm saying is that if we go to this Bitcoin standard, you're going to fucking start there. It's going to start there, and then you have to reverse your way out of an even bigger extreme of that distortion. Whether, and I kind of go back to Demetri Kofinas' part, like, but if we can refine these current institutions, we can potentially, draw ourselves back from where we are.
Yeah. So this is really what it is in a nutshell in so many ways. The man is a Bitcoin maxi who wants to see the end of the world.
No, I see.
He doesn't.
I don't think
Balaji?
either of those. I don't think
Balaji
either of those are
doesn't
the
want
case.
to. I don't think Balaji is like this doomer. I think he's actually trying to help people. I just think he.
I
So
think he
then
also
how do
agrees.
you reconcile these things then?
I
Which
thi-
one is it?
Like, I really think that he is trying to do good here by
Okay.
by like raising the bit signal and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, like Steven said, it's like irresponsible in the way that he went about it. But on the other hand, does the message not get received unless you wave a panic flag?
Yeah,
you know,
so
like
I think like he is trying to help people. I think he's waving the flag because he's like, you should guys get your Bitcoins too, because like I have a lot of them.
because Satoshi's right. Like all these things are directionally correct. I just don't like the deadline and everything that goes about.
And he's not a Bitcoin maxi. Like I think David put it the best. Like Bitcoin is good and for times of war, and ETH would be ETH at times of peace and innovation and growth.
Balaji almost jizzed when he heard
Oh
that.
yeah, he loved that. He loved that.
did.
But I do think he believes that. I think he thinks that probably ETH is maybe the better asset to hold long term, but he just knows that like effectiveness of
Yeah, not
communication, memeability, like Bitcoin has got it. So I don't think he's hopes to see us in anarchy.
yeah,
or
I was being inflammatory.
I know.
But like to move people to action, have you ever seen anybody move to action without a deadline? I can't get anything done in my own work without a deadline. Like
You're
even-
irresponsible when money is involved.
when other people's money.
Other people's money. Yes. Can I throw a theory out there? To me, Bitcoin's purpose is to be. So we had a spirited gun control debate last year at one point.
We should
I'm
do it
like
again.
relatively pro gun. I don't like love. I'm not like gun. I don't have like a million guns, but like I understand the purpose of it. To me, Bitcoin is like it's like an economic gun. Its purpose is to exist and sort of be like a deterrent or a check on a system. And I think in that purpose, it can make the larger system run better because everybody's got a gun. So nobody's going to try to hostile take over the country.
That was pretty good, sir.
But like in a world where everybody has to use the guns, like we don't want to live in that world. Like I don't want to live in a world where I strap a gun to my back and walk outside every day because that's where we went too far over over the cliff.
Not a good world.
Like, so I think it's important. And I do think everybody should buy some Bitcoin. Like, I think it's
How about guns?
mathematically, it's mathematically ignorant, I think, to not have like 1% of your portfolio in Bitcoin. It just doesn't make sense to not do that. But that's a far cry from being like, but 100% in, The dollar is going to inflate.
In
And
90
the entire
days.
world is going to move to a Bitcoin standard. That world is like hell. Quite
And hey,
frankly.
I'm holding like 95% of my net worth. Maybe you should consider it too. That's like a horrible financial decision for 98% of people.
Yes.
I really believe what this comes down to is an ideological battle like everything else we've ever discussed. I think it's a man who wants to see a certain vision of the world, and everyone else and everything we've discussed here is why that vision of the world would not necessarily be better. And there's what I loved about what Demetri said is that's the part of it that he was addressing. He was like, dude, look, like you want a better world, I want a better world. But the version where we exit the matrix in your way is not the answer.
Like I
We
think
need to work with what we have.
there's like a luxury that Balaji has.
Yes.
Where he can exit and then like go to Singapore where laws and stuff still
Well, he's
exist.
3 steps ahead of us.
But like,
he's asking us to join
But
him.
if
He's
step
Morpheus.
Be a billionaire.
but if everyone does that and there are no more rules or no more society, then that sucks for everybody. You know? So like, I think he's like, this came up to me when we did our Twitter Files episode, and I was like uninformed on the subject. I was like, thank God you guys are on this and that other people are on this, because there has to be checks and balances. There has to be somebody on this. But if everyone is uninformed, or if everyone is on Balaji's exit plan, then it's fucked.
I think it's funny because like on a broad, like if you take it in a simplistic terms, we all agree it's probably smart to have a little Bitcoin.
Yeah,
We are probably long Bitcoin over other cryptocurrencies right now.
so many others.
I think we're probably short. We don't think Bitcoin's going to outperform the dollar in anytime soon, and that's where we just kind of like starkly disagree. But I think we're supportive of his general idea of holding Bitcoin, not necessarily like his reason.
Everyone that's in crypto is supportive of Satoshi's view. That's like why we're here. And
Yeah,
he was
well said.
he was just giving Satoshi's view and putting a 90-day deadline on it, and that's stupid.
And being irresponsible about it.
I love the way you've cut through and find those find those things.
But I don't think that's straw manning, by the way.
No,
that
no.
is like
That
a
was
key
not an
point of
example
his argument. It's
that was
not
not
like
an example of straw manning.
yes. Yes.
But
he
no,
literally-
you cut through and you got to the root. I'm saying of like really the heart of the matter of what he's really saying. I feel complete with Balaji and maybe talking a little Arbitrum. Do you guys-
let's end it there because this could be fun.
I would like to say this. I really value these conversations. I wish that Balaji would come on a podcast like this. Like every interview that Balaji has had, Bankless is aside, special place in our hearts. Like they did a great job, but they're all garbage. They're all garbage because everyone's just like, yes, Balaji, what would you like to say next?
show me
What
the
slide
slides.
what slide should I pull up? Oh, slide 17, Jamie. It's like, shut the fuck up. Say something that is of value to challenge this man, and everything that was said here today should be sent to Balaji, and he should absorb this, and he should watch this, and he should accept our invitation to coming on the Alfalfa podcast. And if you are one of the listeners of this podcast, you should tweet this in whatever shape and form that you would like, and you should tell Balaji to come on this podcast, because I think we had the best discussion, and Balaji deserves to be a part of it.
To be fair, I would be very accommodative to Balaji's slides. I would.
To be fair, we'd all need adult diapers because like this guy can go for 4 hours when he's just on a linear path himself. Imagine back and forth. I'd be pissing
We'll
my pants.
fly to you.
I
We'll
have
fly
pee
to you,
so badly
Balaji.
right now.
We'll fly to you, Balaji, and we will wear what is it when you just
catheter.
pee in your? We'll wear catheters. We'll sit for 4 or 5 fucking hours. We'll get the whole thing done. But
I wanna
the
wear the
reality
pants.
is, what
We'll
I
stew in
really,
it.
what I really admire about Balaji is that he brings the ruckus, and we'll bring the ruckus right back, and we'll have a great conversation. So, in a respectful way, of course. Let's talk about this airdrop.
Happy free money, everybody.
Yeah, big free money. Well,
Happy
first of all-
debasement and inflation, everyone.
First of all, guess how many I got.
How many did you get?
0.
Oh yeah, I got 0 too.
Wait,
Well, I bridged
Cheers,
over.
brother.
I bridged over.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I thought I did all the things. Apparently did none of the
So I
things.
bridged over on a lot of wallets.
I bought all kinds of Balloon. I bridged over.
I bridged over, I swapped, and then I bridged back immediately.
Yeah.
And you had to do 3 things, not 2.
Yeah, too much for me.
I actually haven't calculated for the wallets I did where I bridged over, I swapped, I then provided liquidity in a pool, like a very simple pool.
Brilliant.
Like I actually haven't
What for?
did my
I didn't have time for
P&L. Well,
that. Yeah, because you knew this was coming. Smart.
Yeah, I mean, Steven sent a text with advice that, again, he did not follow himself. But he was like, guys, this is the
That's
easiest
me. It's what I
way.
do.
He's like, this is the easiest way to make $1 million if you want to grind it out. And you just need to create a couple hundred
Remember
wallets.
when you wanted to have a party?
I wanted to have an airdrop party where we just all bring our laptops, drink wine, and eat food and grind it out. Because like I did it on many wallets.
I think the best thing we can do is just give the alfalfa to the community and just watch them get rich, because none of this is going to happen for you guys. So.
I was made for this too. I had like the 1,000 Facebook accounts, all the unique browsers and IPs. Like I had the whole tech stack ready to go.
All right, so people want to know how to play this. Steven doesn't have 1 million of them, but people want to know how to play this.
I saw someone in the Discord posted a chart. Was it the OP, like right after the OP drop happened? And it basically showed like a quick drop within the first few hours,
Yep.
all the way leading to like 6 hours. And then like basically 10 to 12 hours later, it had
What everybody's
out and
pointing
increased.
out more so than the time is the percentage of people who've claimed the airdrop. The idea being that once a certain percentage of people have claimed the airdrop, that's like a critical inflection point in the sell pressure.
you saying we need a Dune dashboard
Yes,
to
there will
understand.
probably be a Dune.xyz dashboard, right? Now, there is a bit of a shelling point around this number at the moment. It seems everybody on crypto Twitter has settled around 60% as the point where it's like go time. So I don't know, maybe that number gets front run.
Go time as in people start dumping?
No, it's like the dumping has started to subside.
Oh, once we hit 60%,
once we hit
the
60%
dumping is
claim,
Okay.
maybe that's the inflection point of the dumping. Everybody is also
Interesting.
very much settled in as like
Does
a
this apply to
dollar.
NFTs as well, do you think?
Probably.
Similar, right? Yeah.
Probably.
I
human
noticed-
behavior.
I say that because I just noticed a similar pattern.
I'm wondering, would you buy any?
No.
You know Arbor? Would you buy
No, the
any?
world's ending. I'm buying Bitcoin.
I don't know. I think it might be pumping.
I mean, buying Arbitrum at the right price could be like a hell of a trade. I don't know if you guys have put much thought into
We might
the
be pumping
valuation
here.
of it and everything.
I mean, I would wait for that dump, of course.
If Arb dumps,
I don't know how this is going to play. I'll be watching it for sure.
like I'm not totally discounting the scenario in which coins continue to thrive even despite this FOMC meeting. Like ETH grabs some liquidity at 2100 or maybe even goes further. I could see that happening.
it's possible.
I'm turning mine into cash.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know. I keep posting that stablecoin chart, and like we hit the bottom of it yesterday, and that was the literal top
The bottom
of,
line.
Like we literally touched the bottom line on Bitcoin, and that was like the top of Bitcoin. So like until that thing breaks, like I'm just gonna keep using it.
Liquidity,
But
though.
like this is an injection of liquidity. We're talking about probably like $2.5 billion of liquidity being dropped into an ecosystem that currently has a TVL of $2 billion, right? So I don't think we should underrate that. That's why I said like I swapped out like most of my ETH just for Arbitrum stuff, like the stuff I want to be exposed to. I'm like, why do I want to be exposed to the coin that's getting like dumped via like the merge in Shanghai and all this stuff kind of happening when I could just partake in this sort of like little festival of
I mean,
pumpery.
when you look at all the projects that produce a lot of fees, like GMX is up there on its own right. So if the TVL of the whole ecosystem in which uses GMX doubles, then fees could increase. I think that's a smart trade. I'm not going to play it just because I don't feel like I have
don't
an
blame
edge.
you. It's a shitty environment, but like also
Yeah.
there could very well be another pump.
Cash is nice. Like I'm always a believer you take a percentage out to cash immediately. For me, it would be half or more.
Yeah, I usually do a third.
Yeah. So to each their own.
I have
And
like a
then
3-3-3
you
strategy.
leave a bit of a moon bag and see where it can go.
Yeah,
I think
I go
with-
short, medium, long.
I think with Arbitrum, unlike some other tokens, there's such a framework for what the token should be worth. Like it's not like Blur.
How do you
What
look
the hell is
at
Blur worth?
Arbitrum compared to Optimism?
The TVL is larger. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Do you
Yeah,
happen to know?
so yeah, I mean, Optimism has about 900 million in TVL. Arbitrum, I believe, has 2 billion. So over 2x the TVL on Arbitrum. Optimism is about 250 a coin right now, if I'm not mistaken. I think that if you equate Arbitrum to the market cap of Optimism, you arrive at a price of like $1.08 for an Arbitrum token. But if you think that double the TVL should be double the price, then you get to 216. But then stuff gets a little dicier, right? Because that's the TVL now. What's the TVL of the ecosystem once we drop $2.5 billion of tokens into a $2 billion ecosystem? Like you saw ecosystems like Kava like pumped like 30-40% in TVL. Nobody even knows what the hell Kava is, right? But that pumped 40%.
I've literally never heard of it.
Matic pumped, I think, 60 times
Makes your tongue
when they
fuzzy.
launched their incentives program back during the bull run, right? So if you assume that there's going to be like a pump in TVL as a result of this, which I think is totally plausible, like a modest like 20% pump in TVL could translate to a token price of like, $2.80, close to $3. And then if we go kind of full mania, like there's not like a very high float on this token. Like
I'm going to need this token to be on perps, like be on DYDX, because
I'm sure it'll be on.
I'm just not going to bridge over
some
buy this shit.
No.
Like I'll say the perps.
No,
Bridging's so
yeah.
easy though.
It's
it's
just
just
so many.
Too much.
Yeah, I'm with Eric.
I mean, I
It's
think
just
if you have the
so-
opportunity to buy this below $1, which I doubt you get, but like if you can buy, like it's just, I don't know. I'm probably gonna bid it heavily up to like $1.50. I think
You're bidding.
Oh, for sure, because like I just know what it's worth.
You're probably gonna buy my coins.
I mean, I will buy them off you right now. I'll guarantee you a nice
Now you're making me greedy.
risk-free exit.
I was thinking $2. I would happily sell that.
You just upped your ask.
It's like there is demand.
Hardball, huh?
I don't know. Maybe this ages very terribly a week from now. It wouldn't be the first time, but like I think this. I'm like almost sure this thing goes above $2, and I think there's a very good chance it goes above $3, and like an outside chance it goes above $4. Like there's reflexivity in the TVL. Like you put Arbitrum into the ecosystem, you increase the TVL because people put Arbitrum in pools and stuff like that. And then people want to go to the ecosystem because there's incentives. They bring stable coins, and then that pumps the TVL. And then because the TVL pumps, Arbitrum's worth more. Because Arbitrum's worth more, the TVL is higher. And then so on and so forth.
I
Like
get you.
we have
And I
reflexivity.
think we are kind of in a Goldilocks zone in terms of
11 hours and 4
like
minutes.
macro. There's like sort of like a macro eye of the storm where you can kind of like play these games a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like liquidity has increased, although we think it's temporary. Like,
Yeah.
there is the environment for this thing to do its thing.
People have been waiting to degen into stuff. Like this could pump.
So we're recording this on Wednesday night. We're 11 hours and 4 minutes away from the airdrop. So that's going to
you
put
have
us
already seen my predictions
6 a.m.
age terribly.
tomorrow morning PST. Might get up and play games.
I feel like you got to be up for it. I feel like I wish this is one of those instances where I wish I was better at coding, because I feel like you could use the liquidity pools like to kind of like you can set your liquidity like at a certain price.
Are you
and
still
then you
coding?
yeah, what happened to your coding
What
journey?
happened to your coding?
I'm still doing it very slowly, but I got even
Okay.
more into trading.
Chat
Unfortunately,
GPT disrupted you?
yeah, I was very distracted. But if I knew how to code, like I'd be like, oh, I want to buy Arbitrum below $1, so I'd use an LP.
Yeah,
I would
come on,
like
dude.
put all my liquidity below there
We need
and
an
earn a bunch of
Alfalfa
fees while
host
getting it.
coder.
Don't you only need the base level now because the Chat GPT will?
Yeah,
like,
I'm just
finish you
waiting.
off?
Like, yeah, I feel like learning to code now is
Finish
silly. I
you
can just
off.
wait until
Yeah.
GPT just does everything for me.
Well,
Template.
I think these future episodes will get better and probably more useful when we do them live, which we're working on. And we have Luke from Bankless giving us some advice. Ledger's going to give us a little
Yeah.
advice on getting the live setup. By the way, if you
Ledger
enjoyed
said,
that
"Do you-"
Balaji episode, because it was only an hour and 40 minutes, you could probably thank Luke because he probably did all the
He did all of it.
he probably did all the heavy lifting and making
Oh,
sure
we
that
have
thing
some
was
real
nice and
techno
tight.
kings.
Raw footage is probably 7 hours.
But anyway, we're on our way there.
Ledger
And so-
said, "Do you guys want to go super badass or partial badass?"
Oh,
And I said,
it's a bear market.
Do you
bro.
know us? It's not that. It's like we can't even handle.
Did you
like,
tell him
the
I
bare
already
bones.
ordered all the equipment?
"Well, I'm waiting. He's sending us an equipment list."
Fuck.
Yeah.
We can't even
Well,
handle.
super
the bare
badass
bones.
is going to have all kinds of goodies in
Well,
there.
let me know if I have to cancel that order.
No, it'll probably have some crossover. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, this episode was chock full of like I think good perspectives, and we want to hear everyone else's because I'm sure at some point you were probably
Yeah, what's
yelling
up,
or
community?
agreeing, and
Yeah.
there
Did
was
you
already
guys-
some good takes in the Discord.
Did you
before
guys
we
have
recorded.
any? You have any big takeaways from today that you want to reflect on?
What's your takeaway, Steven?
What's my takeaway?
Yeah.
My takeaway is that my takes on Balaji are so good.
He's like, I'm still right.
Oh my god.
Mine was yours, Armand. Like I actually came in here with like this in my brain, it was just like random things that I couldn't connect. But as we started going, I think I kind of like settled in on
was
what
great for
I
me.
think. And
It's exactly what
it's
I
helpful.
needed. Yeah, it was exactly what I wanted.
You thrived today, Armand. You had a glow about you the whole time, and it made me
Really?
happy.
Yeah?
Yes, I could.
It's like a
I
money
was-
glow?
I was feeding off your glow.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, I'll try to bring more money glow. I
Money
enjoyed
glow.
this.
I enjoy your money
well, I
glow.
enjoy the more like conversational sort of like we're debating an idea with the money stuff. That's where I thrive, Steven. That's where I thrive.
Well, money's not always philosophical.
I know. This was great. It was fantastic. Drop your comments in the YouTube, which of course, as Nick said, will be going live soon. Drop your comments in Discord. We love you, Alfalfa community. We'll see you next time.
Adios.
Bye.
Peace.